Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Housing Committee. My name is Councillor Julian Tuke and I'm chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you ask a question at the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and/or training purposes. Please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. So without further ado, apologies. We've had apologies from Agnieszka Wisniewska. I don't think we've got any further apologies. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No, so straight to public and member questions. We received two public questions from Richard Lawler, Mr. Lawler, and the responses were published this morning. Richard, I believe you've got further questions that you'd like to ask.
Are you okay to show the photograph? Thank you for your response to my earlier question, Mr. Chairman. Residents at Queen Street Block, Anthea House, have raised concerns with me about the condition and design of the bin store. They tell me they often have to climb over rubbish just to reach the bins, and many bags are now being kept on balconies because the waste area isn't fit for purpose. Can I ask whether the current bins and waste storage arrangements are considered appropriate for this site? And if not, what steps the Council's housing section will take to bring this block up to safe and accessible standard?
So I can't comment on the legalities of it and what is defined as safe and accessible by law, because that's not my area of expertise. What I can say is when I look at the photo, it doesn't look great at all. And I thank you for bringing this up. I think it's really important that concerned residents, people like you who care, bring up these things. And I note this seriously, and we will take this back.
Can you take this action away? Can you just take the action away, Matt, to look into it? Is that all right? Thanks.
So Matt will take the action away. Matt, could you come back with a time frame on the action as well at some point? Because the initial response I don't think had a time frame, and I think it would be good to have a time frame on it. Thank you. Mr. Lawler, have you got a second question?
No, I'm happy with that. We'll leave it for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this up. Yeah, Claire is actually making a very valid point. Again, to reiterate, we're grateful that you brought this up, and we're grateful because this is precisely the point of this meeting. So I see my job as not being a member of the council as such. I see this committee as being a check and a balance to the council. And we believe in checks and balances very strongly. So thank you. You were acting as a check and balance, and that's what we want. So thank you again. Okay, the next item is item number 4, which is minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the 24th of September meeting have been circulated with the agenda. I'm not aware of any amendments. Anyone else have any view on any amendments? Okay, so I move that members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September 2025. Could I have a show of hands for that for everyone who was present at that meeting? Okay, so that's everyone who was present.
Just to say, Chair, I wasn't there, so will not vote in favour of those.
That's fine. So I think that's unanimous amongst the people who were present. Okay, and I will sign the minutes shortly. Director briefing. I think today we've got such a packed agenda. If you're all okay with that, this. We will skip that and we'll go right to item number 6. A reminder of the objective of item number 6, it's to provide the committee with the rent setting, voids, recharge and repairs policy for sign-off and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. So I would like to invite Claire Hughes, who's our Director of Governance, Housing and Communities, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this report brings forward 4 policies for your consideration and hopefully onward recommendation to Cabinet for final sign-off. I'm not going to talk them through in any detail because you've obviously got the policies and hopefully read them, but you've got the rent setting policy there, which kind of is what it says on the tin, explains how we kind of set the rent, how we review the rent, and sets out about the differences in the types of rent. You've then got the recharge policy, and this is a policy which seeks to provide information to tenants about when they may be recharged for repairs. So, for example, if they've caused damage to the home, deliberate damage, when we might seek to recover the costs of repairing that from tenants, and that obviously came out through part of an audit that we had quite recently. It includes things like if they break doors, windows, lost keys, unsafe DIY, things like that. It does also provide some information about when the charge wouldn't apply. So, for example, if it was as a result of a crime, for example, and you've got a crime number, or if it's a domestic abuse case, we clearly wouldn't seek to do any recharging there. The third policy before you is what we call the empty homes or voids policy. So this is about how we manage our voids. So we've spoken at this committee a number of times about voids and the issues we've had with turnaround times and that kind of thing. This basically sets out how we'll be managing our voids moving forward, and setting out clearly what tenants can expect when they move into their new home. So sets out what we call the lettable standard. It also sets out in there some key performance indicators so that we can make sure that our tenants can hold us to account and make sure that we're tracking our performance. And then finally, the final policy is the repairs and maintenance for tenanted properties. I stress it's for tenanted properties. The first iteration of this policy had tenanted properties and leaseholder properties in it. However, when we took it to the leaseholder panel, it became quite clear that actually it had become a little bit confused having everything in one place, and it was pretty hard to follow. So what we did is we separated it out. We've made this just for tenanted properties at this stage, and then Matt's team are working on a separate one for leaseholders, which we hope to be able to bring forward to this committee, which we'll obviously consult through the leaseholder panel and then bring forward to this committee hopefully in January. So there'll be a separate process just to make it easier for everybody to follow, and everybody can be really clear on expectations and who's responsible for each one. Each of the policies has had an inequalities impact assessment, which you've got, and each of the policies have also got a sort of summary document for tenants as well, just a sort of short guide, which hopefully again aids with understanding, digestion, and also something that we can easily put on our website. So those are the policies. Questions, I've got other officers here to support if needs be. But yeah, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I jump in straight away with a point about kitchens that I picked up? So I think this is really, really important to have this all written down. I do have some concerns about how kitchens are being dealt with.
At the moment?
Yes, and it's not covered with the policy. So twofold, when you take a kitchen out, you can't put half a kitchen back in, and so you need to put a whole kitchen back in, or you leave people kitchenless. So there's points around process there to make sure that there's no point in giving half a kitchen. Second thing is obviously we've had some issues with sometimes the equipment not matching nicely. So those things aren't in here, but they are relevant to this, aren't they? Which is why I'm mentioning them.
Yeah, so on the first point, We are aware that there is this particular issue at the moment with kitchens, and it is an ongoing piece of work with our contractor that's doing the new kitchen installs. But yes, we are aware of it and we are working on it. Obviously can't leave people with half kitchens. So we'll pick that up. If it's not specific in the policy, we can certainly add it in, or it definitely will be in the procedures anyway that sit behind it.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask in terms of the voids policy. If we look under Appendix 1, the lettable standard, which I believe is on page 13, any non-standard items such as timber, shed or fitted wardrobe installed by the previous occupant to be left in the property when they're found to be functional and safe. Something that we've talked about before is flooring. And it is incredible to me that I'm still seeing brand new carpeting, brand new flooring being disposed of when a property is void. I've seen laminate flooring being thrown into a skip that hasn't been down for 6 months and it has a 25-year guarantee on it. I've seen a gentleman who died and whose family had installed brand new carpets about 7 or 8 months before he passed away. They were perfectly fine, along with the fitted wardrobes that were in there, and they all ended up in a skip. And this is within the last couple of months. So we've talked about when tenants move in and the place is an empty shell and they're bringing their children or whatever into concrete floors. Obviously, it is not part of the housing services responsibility to provide that flooring, but if it's actually there, it doesn't seem to me to be very sustainable or very sensible to be getting rid of flooring that's perfectly good. And I just worry that at the moment, the default position is if there's stuff there, chuck it out because it's too much work and it's too much hassle, rather than wherever possible, we should keep this unless there's an actual reason why. I mean, if it's filthy, if it's, unsafe, then yes, obviously it should be removed. But I think I would hope that we could move to a position where in most cases, we would be leaving that there because a lot of people, obviously with the cost of living, cannot afford to put flooring down themselves. Thank you.
Matt.
Yep, I'm happy to take that question. Just to reassure committee, if there are any items, particularly flooring, that we can leave in situ, I can guarantee you we always do. That's a general principle. Sometimes it isn't that straightforward. We have to provide non-slip flooring in our kitchens and bathrooms under health and safety reasons. So sometimes we do have to look at those, whether or not they're safe for a new incoming tenant. There's also occasions if property has been carpeted or floored, sometimes that can be around things like fitted wardrobes. If those are removed and the flooring doesn't cover the whole room, there might be asbestos tiles underneath. Sometimes it's not that straightforward, but I can certainly, from all the visits I've made recently to a vast number of voids, if there is anything that is adequate, we will always have discussion with a incoming tenant. Sometimes they may say, I don't want that, could you take it up? And we will do that at a later date. But I can give assurances we do not take stuff up for the sake of it, but we are governed by health and safety. And if the flooring covers an entire area, whether there are any gaps, as I said, is asbestos tiles underneath that we need to remove. If we get left certain items that have been put in situ again, we will check with an incoming customer and we will make a note of those on tenancy sign up that they are gifted, because of course we do not maintain non-standard fixtures and fittings. So, but good points.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question? You just mentioned asbestos floor tiles. which obviously I wasn't aware of were a thing. Just as a leaseholder, when a property is purchased, would it make reference to the fact that there might be asbestos floor tiles? Because is there a health and safety risk for leaseholders if they take up previous flooring, find old floor tiles, rip them up, etc., but they won't know the proper removal techniques?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. If it's a private sale that's gone through, so if it's property that's already been purchased and sold on the private market, we wouldn't necessarily get involved, but that's something that we could look at our leaseholder handbook, the guidance that we get, just to say, need to be mindful if you do remove any floor coverings, there could be the risk of asbestos tiles. In general, they're safe unless they're disturbed. Most of them we have removed, so it's only in a small minority of older properties that have been tenanted for many years where we may have asbestos floor tiles. But I'll certainly take that away and think about how we can communicate even better to new leaseholders.
Suzanne.
Hi, well, I live in a former CBH property as well, and we were told that at the time that they are asbestos tiles, but don't worry about them, as long as you don't do anything with them, they're absolutely fine. So, yeah, just backing that up. Thank you.
Okay, are we covered on that issue? Any other thoughts, comments and so on the documentation? By the way, it's really good we've got the documentation. It's important that this stuff is written out and it's clear and it's transparent. So thank you.
Just to forewarn you, you might have a lot more at the next one.
That's okay. We love
We're on
long
a run.
documents. So, no, that's good. It's good. Any other comments? Okay, so next agenda
We
item.
need to take a vote on that.
Oh, sorry, we need to take a vote on that. Now, we could do that. We could vote on everything together, or we could vote on the elements individually. Do you have I would vote on everything together. Are you all happy with that? Okay, so can we have a show of hands to approve the documentation? What are you laughing at, Flo?
I think that's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Okay, good. Okay, good. So next item is item number 7. The objective of this is to provide the committee with key performance information in relation to voids, arrears, day-to-day repairs, antisocial behaviour and property compliance. Claire Hughes, Director of Governance, Housing and Committee, will present to the committee again.
Thank you, Chair. Before I do, I will just take the opportunity to say, hopefully, for you guys, this might be the last time I have to present the compliance report for you, because I am very pleased to introduce Gemma Rowbury, who has joined us in the last few weeks as our new regulatory compliance manager. So I'm hoping from the next meeting, Gemma is going to take the reins and present this report. But for today, I'm not going to drop her in at the deep end, although I may look to her for assistance if you've got any complicated questions. So you've got the report in front of you, members. Again, I don't intend to go through it because hopefully you've read it. Just a couple of quick updates on 1.1.1, where we talk about the current number, the compliance petition for gas. Just an update that now stands at 5 properties. That's due to the one being handed back where the gas has been capped. So that's now down to 5, and obviously the reasons for those are set out within the report, and they're all genuine reasons, so no particular cause for concern. And my other update is around the windows, so that's 1.4.4 of the report. Obviously, at the time of writing, there was 15 actions relating to the installation of windows. We're now down to 8. Now, it's an interesting story because we have 8 blocks left for windows to be fitted, but in each of those blocks there's 4 flats, and 3 of those flats in each block have all had the windows done. It's literally one flat, but we can't close the action until all of the flats in that block have been done, and all of those 8 are due to us not being able to gain access to the property. So we are now going through the usual no access procedure to ensure we can gain access. So if we'd had access to all those properties, we'd have been able to sit here and say, we've now finally closed all of those Windows actions. But unfortunately, we're having access problems, as we probably could have anticipated on a few properties. We have included a bit of additional information for you this time. And again, we are building this report as we go. So again, any feedback is always welcome. So we've included a bit more detail around the stock condition surveys this time. So rather than just giving you that high level number, we've given you that breakdown of how many we've done in kind of each archetype, which is quite useful. And also what you're getting in this report, and you'll see this in every report moving forward now, is you're getting the decent homes data starting to come through. And this is obviously because we've been doing our stock condition surveys. We've now got the data to put into the system to generate what's coming through. And you can see there in section 1.7 of the report, those decent homes figures, and we're operating about a 2.3%, which currently don't meet the decent homes standard. 77 of those, which is 108 properties, 77 relate to thermal comfort and 31 relate to component failures, which usually means, and someone correct me if I've got this wrong, but a kitchen or a bathroom needs replacing, is what that generally means. So I probably won't say any more. There's a few bits more context within the report for the other areas of performance for you as well. But as always, I'm happy to take questions and I'll be assisted by other officers if needed. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. Ian has as well. Jan has as well. So there were 3 high-risk compartmentation issues which were due to be done by the 24th, so 2 days ago. Have they been done?
Where we are with those. They're all in progress.
Could you talk through what those are?
So the works are ongoing, but should be finished by the end of the month. They were actually held up due to a contractor issue. But I've had assurance from the contractor that it will be signed off by the end of this month.
We'll minute that, obviously. There was also, well, you mentioned the component failures. So that's basically kitchens and bathrooms, because that's 5%. We've got it in fair or poor condition under the decent housing thing. Is it?
I can come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so components in this context is generally a kitchen or a bathroom that's got something within it that fails the decent homes standard. What we're also now working out, and we've got an early draft of the 5-year planned maintenance programme. So what we can do at an officer level is we can now look at it and go, right, that property is not to standard. Where is it in the plan? Is it in year 1? Is it in year 5? If it's in year 5, obviously we can then make the decision to pull that up to year 1. Or, you know, so that's the work that we're doing now to make sure that those ones that haven't achieved the standard are in that sort of year 1 programme for next year.
Final question, sorry, I'm hogging it as the chair. Thermal comfort, what does that mean in plain English?
I think I've got, do you know the answer, Gemma? Better than I do. I think essentially it's not warm enough. It's either too hot or too cold. It's the temperature, in a nutshell.
What I'm trying to understand there is someone could choose to turn their heating down and therefore it would be cold, but that wouldn't be the council's responsibility. So it's not that they've got terribly drafty windows or something which is our responsibility. That's what I'm trying to pin down.
That's right. So yeah, so it might be that it's something that we can control. So it isn't the fact that they've turned their heating down. It's the fact that it's too cold, because it could be something like there's not a draft excluder or something like that. Or it could be that, you know, it's too hot in there for some reason. I can't think of an obvious reason why it would be too hot, but maybe it's over insulated or something. But too cold is usually the most common one, and it's usually due to things like you say, maybe drafty windows or doors or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I ask about the stock condition survey? are we still on track to have 100% done by December? And when we were starting off on the stock condition surveys, I remember we said that we were not doing energy performance certificates at the same time in order to speed up the progress of the stock condition surveys. However, like all other social housing providers, we are targeted to achieve EPC grade C or above by 2030. So what plans are in place for us to actually achieve that? Thank you.
Claire, would you?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. Okay, so you're right, we did take the EPCs out to try and speed up the process. I will be totally honest with you, Ian, I would be very surprised if we reach 100% stock condition by December, as much as I would like us to. We are in the stage now where we're trying to deal with doing stock condition surveys in properties where people generally don't want to allow us access, and that is a long process. And it's also not really been tested yet about whether the court will actually give you an order to force access for a stock condition. And we suspect that the answer is they won't. So we won't be the only people in this situation. But we will continue to try, of course, and we're putting in place methods like if somebody rings up for a repair, for example, and they've not had their stock condition survey, can we flag that on our system so that we can do the stock condition survey at the same time? So trying to get in wherever we can. What was your other question? Sorry. EPCs. So yes, so one of the things that is missing from this report, which hopefully will be in the next iteration, is the current where we are with in terms of EPC ratings for all of our properties. So we have the data, so we can pull it into the report easily enough, and it'll tell you how many of our properties are in A, B, C, D, Getting the ones that are below C up to C are largely part of the decarbonisation programme, and we got some funding from central government on what we call Wave 3. So most of those properties are being picked up in that, which is a comprehensive. They will also obviously pick up some of the thermal issues that we talked about through that programme as well. So it is being picked up in that programme, which obviously doesn't come to this committee, but that is ongoing.
Jan.
My question was about paragraph 131, because I've never worked in admin and I don't know how long things take. It says current fire risk actions, one high risk action awaiting approval on costs. I find that wording slightly alarming because I know that, one fire action isn't a lot, but I've got this rosy idea that if something is urgent and a high risk and involves fire, that the cost should be determined very quickly. So I just wondered how long it generally takes to get approval for costs, and does the process of communication need looking at?
So it's not necessarily, so what I would say is, yes, one action doesn't sound a lot, but one action in terms of fire can be anything from a really small thing or a new door or a new window to a whole lot of compartmentation work, which requires a significant amount of internal work, which can cost, as we're seeing at the moment, a hell of a lot, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So we're seeing that kind of level of cost coming through at the moment. And the fact that it costs that much isn't a reason to not do it, of course, and we've had a conversation this week about what needs to go into the capital programme for next year for fireworks, actually. But also it's not just about waiting on approval for costs on our end. We have to have contractors price the job to be compliant with our procurement process. We can't just go, can you go and do this work for us? So it's not as easy a process as you might think. That being said, any high risk action, what we do is put mitigations in place to minimise any risk. So I don't know off the top of my head which one this specifically is, but for example, we might change the evacuation procedures for that if it's a block to make sure, or we might do a temporary, put some kind of temporary measure in place. So we will always do mitigation on any high risk stuff so that there is no risk to the tenant, but we keep them at high risk to keep the mind focused. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Lizzie?
Hi. Yeah, so back onto the stock condition surveys. Again, this is something that's come up as a point of interest for the leaseholders, just because a stock condition survey will help us to establish and derive what sort of forthcoming Section 20 notices there might be, and to be able to understand if there's going to be any high pattern of costs. Blocks, I note, are at 86.6%, which most leaseholders will be part of. Is there going to be any sort of communication around when the block's been surveyed, and when or how would that stock condition survey then be considered for leaseholders? Because I appreciate this is done more through like a tenant's gaze as opposed to a leaseholder's gaze.
What I would say is I don't know the answer in terms of whether you've been communicated with about when the blocks are being surveyed, because I don't know. I'm assuming not on the basis of the question. In terms of any sort of upcoming work, then I sort of alluded to it earlier. What we use this data for is to generate a future planned maintenance programme, which will look at least over the next 5 years and longer where we can. Absolutely is our intention that when we've got that to a state where we will consult tenants and leaseholders on that planned maintenance programme. So you will have an idea of what's coming down the line in the future. Obviously, what we won't be able to say at that time is how much things are going to cost, because particularly if it's in year 5, for example, but you will at least get an idea of this is where the work's going to be over which years. So we will consult on that.
And just to jump in on that, when, as a leaseholder purchasing a property on the private market, we did get a sort of cost profile for forthcoming work over a 10-year period. Now, noting that obviously COVID was in the middle of that, so as expected, there were some delays on that plan, but some of that still hasn't materialised. Not that I'm complaining personally, actually most of these things, there are no obvious problems in my block. But again, thinking of a 5-year, 10-year profile, or however long the future plan maintenance will sort of span, are we expecting that's going to be quite strictly adhered to? And is that going to be sort of set out in terms of, the whole drive behind this piece? Or is there going to be some sort of flexibility, and potentially would there then be the point of a sort of review of whether something is still fit for purpose or not?
So there'll always have to be an element of flexibility in it, because we obviously have to react to things that fail. If a roof fell in, for example, we'd obviously might have to prioritise that over something that might be in the plan, because we've only got a certain amount of money. So we need, and as I was mentioning, fireworks, for example, that has to be the priority. So if we've got to put money into that, so there's always going to be an element of flexibility. But I think what's important is that when we're using that flexibility, is that we're keeping people updated, that's changed, that's now going to push back. That was in year 2, it's now going to be in year 3 or whatever. So I think the important thing there is about keeping people updated and keeping people consulted on what's happening. And absolutely, that is definitely one of the things that I know me and the wider leadership team in housing are absolutely committed to doing, is making sure we keep people updated. I think we do accept that it's something that we failed at in the past. I'm happy to say that. I don't think that's, a bad thing to say. But I think we're getting better.
Could I add on that point as well? So I've been a leaseholder many times in the private sector, and I know when suddenly service charges turn up, which are completely unexpected and are very high, it can be deeply worrying. Yeah. So I think Lizzie's point about leaseholders have to budget like everyone else. They need as much visibility about costs as early as possible. That's what we all would reasonably want.
Absolutely, and we hear that loud and clear. And one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that Matt's going to be bringing forward early next year is the policy around Section 20s and how all of that works and all of that. So again, we'll be consulting the leaseholders directly on that, but that's definitely something that we are hearing loud and clear, and we really appreciate the input from Lizzie on that so far. Actually, it's been really beneficial for us.
You'd like to jump in.
Yeah, having a planned maintenance programme will definitely give us clearer insight into anticipated costs. From a legal point of view, obviously when we get a new leaseholder, we have to serve a Section 125 notice. That commits us to what we detail in that. If we add anything else in, we can't charge for that. We can only relate to the Section 125 notice, but that is only for new leaseholders. Obviously, for anything, any private sales, if we're asked by purchasing solicitor, we will check with our colleagues in technical investment and give advice about what could be anticipated. As Claire has alluded, sometimes things do chop and change, priorities come in, like the fire risk assessments, they've had to take priority. But with a good planned maintenance programme off the back of the stock condition survey, that should give us better insight into anticipated costs. Just to give reassurance, I mean, there are always these unexpected costs that do happen when works need doing. We do accommodate as best we can, and we're pretty agile on it. Any leaseholder that's experiencing any financial challenges, we will look at various options available to us to work with them.
Any other comments? Or can I make a general comment, actually? So privately and publicly, I have been concerned about stock condition surveys and actually some of the issues we've had around the buildings. I think we've made considerable progress, and I just wanted to register that. I think when we came out of CBH, it's fair to say there was a lot we didn't know.
Yeah.
And actually we do know now, most of it, because we've caught up with the stock condition surveys largely, and we've got through all those issues. So I think it's really good that we've made this progress, and thank you for that. Ian and then Flo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did want to just pick up on your point. I happened to meet one of the surveyors doing the mopping up process, trying to get stock condition surveys done where they hadn't been done. And we just were chatting about how the process was going and what have you. And we were talking about some of the issues that we'd encountered. But as when I had my stock condition survey done, the gentleman in question said, yes, but don't do yourselves down, because Cheltenham is still about the best local authority that we deal with in terms of responding to this. And so, yes, there are issues that have been thrown up. Yes, there are shortcomings, and I think we're all aware of that. But I think want to balance that by saying that actually the team are doing very good work, and they are responding as quickly as they can to the issues that are being raised. And that's not from internally from within Cheltenham Borough Council, that's from the external contractor that's actually undertaking the survey work, who deal with a lot of different authorities, a lot of different providers. And it's the second time that I've heard from them that Cheltenham is actually about the best authority that they deal with.
Well, he's stolen my lines, actually. Just to say, through you, Chair, and to officers here, the amount of work that's been done since CBH came back into Cheltenham family, into our family, has been tremendous. And what that has enabled us to do is exactly what you said, Ian, to make our tenants aware that this is actually about their home and making sure it's as we want it to be, as they want it to be, and doing things to improve it and to make things better. And I couldn't say a bigger thank you than saying it here, Chair. So thank you for that opportunity to say thank you to our staff for the work that's been done. And above all, the fact that they get it, they understand what this is about. It's not just somebody coming in and saying, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, fine, finish. No, this is about, yes, we see it. Yes, we want to change it. Yes, we want to make it better. Not just because of us as officers and us as workers, but for tenants, because the tenants are the most important thing to us. So through you, Chair, as I say, through Claire, through Caroline and other officers here, can I just say thank you to the staff who've been doing that work.
On to the next challenge. They're always. Item number, I think we're done on that item, aren't we? Item number 7. So item number 8. So that's to review health and safety activity that has been undertaken during the period, whether it was successful, and identify key tasks and challenges being faced. I'd like to invite Claire to speak to the committee again.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has actually been written by the Health and Safety Manager, who unfortunately isn't able to be with us this evening. I will, of course, try my best to answer your questions, but if you've got anything complicated, I'll have to take them away. But this report just sets out from July to September the sort of work that's been happening in the health and safety area. So this is not property compliance. This is health and safety. So a couple of key activities are set out in the report. There's been an inventory check against all the sort of equipment and that kind of thing. So that's making sure we've got a register of everything in terms of the inventory, but also checking that it's all been safety tested and all of that kind of thing. There's been some HHSRS training, which is housing hazards. Oh, I can never remember it when I'm put on the spot. Health and safety rating system, housing health and safety rating system. Which you'll have the policy for at your next meeting. And we also actually did get Ubico compliance team in to do a bit of a health and safety audit for us. Just a bit of external validation is always useful. That audit is now back. There's some actions in there and we are working through those at the moment. The report also sets out kind of just a bit of information, again, incidents that have occurred between the period of April and September. So you'll see there's the charts in there, and then there's a bit more detail in sort of July, the second quarter, July, August, September, about how many particular types of incident we've had. The highest number remains at unacceptable behaviour. Just to clarify that that's unacceptable behaviour generally from tenants towards staff, whether that's usually verbal abuse. So yeah, that's also captures things like ridders and house fires and near misses.
What does riddle mean?
Reportable incident. Is it reportable incident? I can't remember.
Because that was the only point of the
or something.
Okay.
What is it?
But in layman, it doesn't need to be the exact wording, but just so we know roughly what it is.
It's a significant issue. So something more than a trip. It's something significant.
So
We've got
risk
to
to
report to
life
the
or
health and
something.
safety executive.
Okay,
Basically.
thank you.
I've just Googled it, Chair, if you would like to know. It's, reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences regulations. There we go.
Things we need to take most seriously.
Yes.
Comments or questions on this?
Oh, yeah, I can rely on you.
Ian?
Yeah, nothing complicated. I'm just observing the graph at 2.4. You're saying about unacceptable behaviour, but it seems to have come down over looking over the past 3 years. I mean, that is quite incredible that it's come down by that amount. Slightly more concerning is that the number of house fires seems to have gone up. Is there any particular reason for that?
Do you want to answer that, Caroline?
Yeah. Sadly, this year, they've almost exclusively been related to e-bikes and the charging of. So we've been doing quite a bit of work on the management of e-bikes, and there's a policy coming to you early in the new year for your consideration, and we've tried to incorporate best practice into that.
That's very interesting, actually. Any other comments or points that you would like to make about this? No? I think we're on to the next agenda item, which is the housing improvement plan. So the purpose of this is to provide the committee with a progress update on the improvement plan developed to resolve areas of non-compliance with the regulator of social housing's consumer standards. I would like to invite Claire once more to present to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Feels like the Claire show tonight. You will get someone else in a minute, I promise. Just a quick recap. You'll remember that we had the new consumer standards, so not something that we'd had before. The new consumer standards feels like a long time ago now. They came in 2024. And we, at some point, will be inspected against those standards. We don't know yet when our inspection is going to be, but any time in the near future. And when we come out of the end of that inspection, we'll be graded at either C1 or to C4. C1 is obviously full compliance, sort of top marks really, and C4 indicates sort of significant areas of concern. So for a little while now, we've been working on our kind of progress. Where are we as an organisation? What is it we need to do? We've done a number of gap analyses, and I know you've seen some of those. And we've now done our self-assessment, which is attached to the report. And we've set up our new housing improvement team, which kind of acts as the programme board. And what we've done is we've given each standard has got a lead, so an officer that leads the kind of action plan against each of those standards. And then we meet as a programme board kind of every month to review the progress against each of those 4 standards. What we would like to do moving forward, so from January, what we'll be doing is bringing quarterly reports to this committee that give you, from the programme board, that give you sort of key highlights from the previous quarter, our progress against actions in a sort, hopefully in some kind of pictorial form that's easy for you to track in terms of a progress thing, and sort of key risks and issues. So again, it will enable you to hold us to account as officers, but also it'll be then in the public domain. So if people want to come and ask questions, as Mr. Lawler did today, that would be great. But also, you know, if people want to send in questions, we can happily answer them. We're also going to be doing regular updates directly to the tenant panel and to the leaseholder panel on our improvement journey. I mentioned the self-assessment, so we completed that self-assessment back in about August time, and what we did is we then commissioned HQN, so that's the Housing Quality Network, who are well known in this industry, to provide a review of what we'd done in terms of our self-assessment. They did that in a desktop basis to start with, and then they did a number of kind of workshops, interviews with relevant staff. We had a feedback session with them about a fortnight ago, and I think what I would say is I came out of that session thinking, well, they didn't tell us anything we didn't already know, so that's good. There was nothing that I came out of there thinking, oh gosh, we've really missed something major here. The actions that they identified for us are the actions that we already actually had identified and had on our action plans already. And I've included in here just some of the key things that they sort of picked up. So very pleasingly, they specifically picked up on our compliance strategy, which they said was excellent. So that's great considering where we were only a few months ago. They said our TSM results, our tenant satisfaction measures, are actually really good when you compare them across the sector. We're performing well. And they thought our sort of overarching structure and our governance and that was generally very good as well. So all of those are really, really positive things. They obviously identified some things we need to do, some little things that we tripped ourselves over with, really like some old policies still said CBH. That's a quick win, we can fix that. What I also was really, really pleased with, I deliberately didn't attend any of the workshops, so I couldn't, because you know me, I can't resist the desire to talk. So I didn't want to kind of lead them in any way. But what was really, really pleasing for me as the director was to get the feedback that all of the staff that attended those workshops were really helpful, were really engaged and really knowledgeable in their particular areas of expertise. So that was really, really pleasing to get that feedback. Obviously, there's quite a few actions, and I've put some of them in here just for your information. And as I said, what we're doing now is we're trying to complete as many of those actions as we can. Some of them are quick, won't take us very long. Where they're going to take a longer period of time, we're creating a plan for what that might look like with key milestones and things, and that's the sort of thing you'll start to see from January. We've also asked HQN, and this is just a little heads up for you as committee members as well, that in January they are going to come in and undertake a full mock inspection for us. So that will be as if they were the regulator. So they will ask us for a load of documents in advance, they'll assess them, and then they will come in and they will pick people to interview as if they were the regulator. Now, when they pick those people, it could be any of you on this committee as well, just so you know. In fact, I would be surprised if they don't pick at least 2 or 3 of you. So just if you get an invite, that's what that is. And at the end of that, which should be around the end of February, we will then get a feedback report, which again, we will happily share with you, which will give us an indicative grading of where they think we are. So that's where we are. I don't plan to say any more on that, but again, if people have got questions, happy to take them now, or again, if they're really detailed or anyone wants any specific about any particular actions, happy to have a conversation offline if that helps with anybody.
Anyone? No? You covered it all. Good. We can go. We can.
You've already answered all the questions.
Excellent.
So item number 10, which is to provide the committee with the 6-month position in relation to tenant satisfaction measures. We've got a different voice this time. I'd like to invite Caroline Walker, Director of Housing, Customer and Community Services, to present to the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. And obviously, Claire's helpfully alluded to some of the positive messages coming from this report. So, as you just mentioned, this is a 6-monthly update to committee on the customer satisfaction surveys results. Just to remind you all of those, it's done independently by a company that telephones around 250 tenants every quarter, and they are 250 different tenants as well, to get as broad a perspective as possible. The key message across quarters 1 and 2 is that overall tenant satisfaction went up 3%, which was really, really positive. As Claire alluded to, there are 6 areas that we are performing above 80% as a council. And some of the important, obviously, safe home is one of the important ones of those. The time taken to complete repairs, and that we treat, as the council, tenants fairly and with respect. So those are really quite important areas to get feedback on. The less positive, we've got 3 areas that are below 70% in satisfaction, and to be honest with you, that's we've wrestled with these for quite a while, and they are a sector-wide issue. Other housing providers also experience issues with the complaints handling, TSM, the response to ASB, TSM, and also, slightly more puzzlingly, because this one moves about a bit, the listening to views and acting upon them. So those are ones that we're working on at the moment. What we do in terms of process is, when the results come back in from the company, we contact every dissatisfied customer and attempt to resolve whatever their issues are, but also try and draw themes from that to feed into future plans. So one of the things we did in the past is, one of the frustrations for the staff is that we get a poor result by our standards on complaints handling. So we introduced a text survey, and we're getting a very poor response rate to that text survey, very few people coming back. So our next step is to have a little scrutiny meeting with people who actually made complaints to us, for us to understand if there's anything we can do better in the handling of that complaint. Not that they've made a complaint in the first place, but how that complaint is handled, whether we're meeting target, etc., etc. So we're trying to find ways to improve and then hopefully influence perceptions going forwards. Of course, happy to take any questions.
Ian, do you want to go first, actually? I always jump in at the beginning.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just 2. First of all, the complaints handling score. I think we've talked about this before, where if somebody has made a complaint they're probably already pretty ticked off. And then you don't uphold their complaint, so you don't give them what they want, so they're even more ticked off. They're hardly going to say, well, you know, actually, you didn't give me anything, but it was remarkably well handled. So I'm just wondering, when we're looking at this, how this is benchmarked across the sector, because is this what we would expect to see from comparable providers of the same size? I mean, if it's just us with people not happy with the complaints handling process, well, that's a big problem. But if this is fairly standard, as I say, when people are making a complaint, I mean, they're not exactly going to be jumping for joy about the process if they're not getting what they want. So that was my first question. And secondly, in terms of making progress on some of the areas where people are raising issues in terms of repairs and so forth. We spoke, I think, at the last meeting about getting better contractor management. And I've seen that in a couple of the policies that have come before us tonight. And I've seen, you know, checking for competency and so forth. What I haven't seen is, are we then looking to get a CBC housing officer to check a proportion of this work to ensure it's actually being done? Because I've had experience of this where contractors have come out and either not done the work or gone away and never come back. And I think we talked about the communication around that. But if we are looking to drive these numbers forward, then I'm wondering where we stand on, in terms of that additional contractor management and the quality control that we're putting in place. Thank you.
Helpful, by the way, Caroline.
So on your first point, not only you very eloquently describe how frustrated are people to even have to make a complaint. We are obviously we have the details of everybody who responds to the customer satisfaction survey, and probably at a rate of only 2 in 10 have ever actually made a complaint. So they're offering you an opinion or a perception about our complaints handling process without ever having used it, which is difficult. Well, you know, there's a whole other part about the services we deliver and whether the complaints are valid or not. And to be fair, we probably, as you can see with my next report, we're upholding probably 9 out of 10 complaints because they're genuine and they're valid. So that's one point, is that we're working with opinions about people who haven't used the process, because genuinely, and this is not a Cheltenham issue, this is a sector-wide issue, is they're hearing the word complaint and offering an opinion about it. And it's really important to understand that. And it's very hard then for us to, we won't ever stop trying, but it's hard for us to make the process better. We can, of course, make the service delivery better, but it's, of course, making the process better, which is actually what this question is getting at. Again, this is on my next paper. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are issues with contractors. I don't know the answer to your specific question around the quality checking, but I'm certainly, with Claire, happy to take that away and come back on it, unless anybody wants to add to that. Okay.
I think just to add to that, if I could, Chair, on the contractor management, you're right, we did talk about this at the last meeting, and we'd identified, haven't we, that there's been a bit of an issue with contractor management. We've developed that further again now, and we considered a leadership team a process for how we can improve contractor management. So that's going to be rolled out. But you're right, just because a contractor's doing the work, it doesn't mean we can just go, we haven't got anything to do with it. We should absolutely be doing those spot checks, at least, to make sure that there's at least a percentage of the work that any contractor does is checked by somebody, our end, to make sure that we are satisfied that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And again, that is part of the process that we're looking to roll out, but accept that we're not quite where we need to be just yet.
Thank you. Caroline, as you probably know, I'm an ex-market researcher, so this is my thing. So, first of all, how much can you, the ability to benchmark the data against other providers is really valuable in terms of knowing whether we're doing well or not and where we need to improve. However, it seems like that question about complaints, and I'm very cognizant of sample sizes, but could benefit from maybe some routing where you ask people, have they made a complaint within the last year or not? Is that going to muck up the ability to benchmark? That would be a sensible thing, because then you could analyse the data against people who've made complaints and are they happy or not, against people, as you say, just have perceptions of the process but have never actually made one.
Unfortunately, the questions are prescribed by the government. And we, as a housing sector, because I was involved in this when the TSMs were introduced, we made that very point many times, but it wasn't taken on board. So that's why we're in the position we're in as a sector.
Fair enough. Can I mention a separate point? Damp and mould. So, again, this is self-reported data. We know that. But a third of respondents are saying that they've got a problem with damp and mould. Now, that doesn't align with what we're getting from our stock condition surveys, does it? But nevertheless, that is kind of concerning and important because of Awaab's law and so on. So how are you dealing with that data and what's the actions from that?
So that's a very good example of what gets picked up through the follow-up calls that we do. So damp and mould is obviously one of the key things that we will pick up, and we, around a year, 18 months ago, developed quite a sophisticated approach to damp and mould as an organisation, which involved, we have scripts in the contact centre, so when anybody reports it, we go through a script so we can understand the size, the severity of the issue, etc., etc. So those that we pick up through the customer satisfaction surveys go through exactly the same process, so that even though they may not have reported it to us, we can then pick it up as we can pick it up and remedy it through that route.
Lizzie.
Got a question as well. It's just on that point around contractor management, and for leaseholders, repairs that we report are typically going to be in communal areas. And so you kind of miss that feedback loop around, is the job complete when someone's come out? If it's not repaired, where it's going to be picked up. And this was something that we picked up when we looked at the housing repairs and maintenance policy when leaseholders were included within there. And I now understand that's being split out, so potentially something to raise there. But is there going to be some sort of feedback mechanism so people can understand where reported repairs are going to be carried out in communal areas, so that we can then establish and sort of, feedback and make sure that they are being picked up in a satisfactory manner?
It is certainly part of the regulatory standard. I think, to be really fair, Lizzie, it's an area of development for us. I think we need to pick that up, and that's quite, it's not a straightforward thing to do. To get those communication loops working really well will take some time, but it's certainly something that we need to do. So thank you very much for the question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next agenda item is item number 11, which is to provide an overview of housing-related complaints and compliments, identifying key areas of dissatisfaction and areas for learning and service improvement. I'd like to invite Caroline again to present to the committee.
Again, thank you very much, Chair. So you're all very familiar with seeing this report. I think one of the really pleasing things for me is that we hit some difficulties in Q1 in terms of processing complaints on time and delivering on target. And with Claire's support, we made some changes so that all stage 1 complaints are now dealt with by the complaints team, so that effectively providing a resolution function. And that's proved to be really positive for us, because complaints are being processed far more quickly, and we're having to ask for far less extensions, which is really positive, and also puts us in a good position with the Housing Ombudsman, which is always a good thing. But also their level of effectiveness as a team has meant that we've seen a marked reduction in the numbers progressing to stage 2. So therefore we're resolving things at an early stage, which is extremely positive for tenants because it means they're not having to get involved in a lengthy complaints process. So those are the major things I want to say. It's already been mentioned in this meeting tonight, but we are experiencing issues with the number of complaints for kitchen and bathroom installations. That is a major area of concern because certainly for me, having a tenant having a kitchen or bathroom replaced should be a really positive experience. It shouldn't be generating the level of complaints that it is at the present time. So we're working extremely hard with the contractors to get that to a better position.
Can I just say, Caroline, that's reassuring. It's good to hear you say that about bathrooms and kitchens, because I agree. Flo.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that one of the interesting things about this is page 194, where the number of stage 2 complaints is actually very, very small. I attended a meeting in Leeds with the Ombudsman a few weeks ago, and we were looking at the numbers of complaints at stage 1 and then stage 2 for a range of different organisations. And that is actually very small by comparison with most housing providers. And I just think if we are sorting them out at stage 1, that's brilliant. But I do think there is learning to be done from this. Caroline and I have had this chat before. So I think if we can do that, all to the good, let's get this down to 0 if we can.
Any other comments on Ian?
Yeah, just to say, can I compliment you on the learning framework, which I think is really good. If this is now being embedded into QL and into the systems going forward, I think this again will hopefully drive things forward because we have a mechanism for learning from where we're going wrong. So I think that's excellent.
Excellent. Suzanne.
I just want to say thank you for all you do. Compliments are much harder to get than complaints. People are very easy to complain, very, very quick to complain, but they don't come forward with compliments. So thank you for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I would echo that. So next item is the updates from the tenant and leaseholder panels. Updates have been sent through in advance, so thank you very much for that. Agnieszka isn't here on the tenant side, so I think we should just take that as read. Lizzie, would you like to present from the leaseholder side or talk to us?
So yes, as set out, we had, as part of the regular leaseholder forum, we got together and we've formally agreed our terms of reference now. So as well as that, we're trying to be more sort of forward-looking, and we have agreed that we will be doing 4 formal scrutinies a year within that. The 4 topics being repairs and maintenance, service charges, major works and communications. So we'll have updates throughout the period off the back of those. And other than that, we did have a look at the housing repairs and maintenance policy, but we'll follow up on that as it's now been split out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from anyone?
Can I say?
Lizzie? Yeah, sure.
It's not a question, but I just want to put on record that I think the decision by this council to set up a separate leaseholder panel was one of the best decisions we made when we started going through this governance process of what this was all going to look like when we brought it back in-house, because I think it was a missing, for me, it was a missing that kind of loop and that feedback. And I think the way that it's coming together now and what we're starting to see from that is really paying dividends. So I just wanted to put on record that thank you to everybody that sits on the leaseholder panel and on the tenant panel, of course. They're a bit more developed and they've been going a lot longer, but I think bringing that leaseholder panel has really, really paid dividends for us from an officer perspective, because we're really getting some really rich feedback from that, which is really, really useful in terms of building our services. So I just wanted to say that, if that's okay, Chair.
And I'll just jump in and say sorry, because I appreciate as leaseholders, we're often coming at it from a completely different angle from how you're all coming at it, because we have sort of the cost concerns, etc. And, you know, often like, well, it's a perfectly good block in terms of actual fit for purpose, is it leaking, etc. Whereas you've got to come at it from more like a proactive repairs viewpoint. But so it is hard to balance the two things, but I appreciate you listening and taking away the feedback that we provide.
Lizzie, can I also thank you? We're turning into a mutual appreciation, aren't we? But as I said, I've been a leaseholder on a number of occasions. Actually, the things that you express they relate to all sorts of leasehold properties. And that, you know, they're things that resonate with me, even though I've lived in different kinds of properties. The things you're saying are common to all those things, but that doesn't mean they are not issues. And that doesn't mean that we should not try to tackle them and make things better for leaseholders. So thank you. Any other comments? Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to revisit something that I have mentioned before, and it is something that a number of tenants have approached me privately about and asked me to raise, and it is relating to the replacement of housing benefit with universal credit, and the position that it is putting tenants into. Now, it has taken me a number of months to dig into this and get to the bottom of what is actually happening, which I believe I have done now, and thanks to members of Matt's team who I've been talking to. So, housing benefit used to be administered by Cheltenham Borough Council, and it was paid as per the terms of the tenancy agreement on the due date. And that has gone on for decades, as far as I'm aware. Tenants are now, who were in receipt of housing benefit, are being forced to migrate onto universal credit. And universal credit does not pay the rent on the due date, it pays it a month in arrears. And so every single tenant who is in receipt of housing benefit is getting one of these, which is basically telling them that they are now in hundreds of pounds worth of debt, they are in arrears with their rent, they have done absolutely everything they were asked to do, they have provided every piece of information, but because in its infinite wisdom, Universal Credit has decided to pay the housing costs a month in arrears, every tenant who is on or was on housing benefit who has now moved over to universal credit is being asked to pay hundreds of pounds, set up a payment arrangement and fill in the shortfall. And these are the most vulnerable, generally the poorest tenants, in what I understand to be a disagreement between universal credit and Cheltenham Borough Council. Now, I think, as I've discussed with you before the meeting, Chair, that this may be above our pay grade in terms of something that we can deal with, because I don't think this is just a Cheltenham problem. I think this is a nationwide problem. But the most vulnerable tenants, the sick, the disabled, that are being put into a position where they they don't understand why suddenly, after paying their rent on time for something like 20 years, in 14 years in my case, never ever been in arrears, not once, suddenly I have a bill for £300, £400 and I'm expected to make up this shortfall. Because unlike Cheltenham Borough Council, I don't think that Universal Credit actually have tenants or claimants or people who live at the sharp end of this around when they're making these kind of decisions. So I appreciate this is not the fault of the housing service, but we have a lot of very frightened, very concerned tenants who have never been in debt in their lives and are suddenly being sent letters that they owe hundreds of pounds, and they're frightened and they don't understand it. I mean, it's taken me a fair few months to dig into this and get to actually the nitty-gritty of why this is happening. But if we have the opportunity maybe to speak to Max Wilkinson and challenge this, I think it should be challenged quite robustly, because this is entirely preventable and entirely avoidable. And I don't think that, through absolutely no fault of their own, the most vulnerable tenants should be put in this position.
Here, totally agree. I've got a comment. I know, Flo, you have. Would you like to go first?
Yes, Chair, I was going to suggest that if colleagues agree, we should approach Max and see if we can get a meeting with the Minister, because this is something that would have to be sorted out at ministerial level. And if we can do that through Max Wilkinson, our Member of Parliament, then we can actually potentially get action fairly quickly. And given what the budget said today, it's something I can't see them saying no to. But then again, I have been wrong when it comes to ministers in the past. But let's have a go. Let's see what we can do. And Chair, if you're happy for that and colleagues are happy, then let's get on and do.
Flo, I'm absolutely happy. And what I was going to suggest, second idea, is that I would write a formal letter as the chair. So then your suggestion of actually having a meeting with the minister, we can request that in the letter. And then we've got a kind of formal audit trail on it. Ian, thank you so much for bringing this up, because this matters. One thing I would ask to Cheltenham Borough Council is, this is a common situation. I have experience of a relative who lives in another part of the country who went through exactly the same issue. And it was a pain and worrying then. When people ring up and say, I've just been moved to Universal Credit and there is this delay, I'm assuming that because it's a common situation, that we understand that there are delays when you first move to Universal Credit and deal with it reasonably. Could I?
Yeah, I can give full reassurance. Obviously, Ian has kindly spent time with, in particular, the benefit and money advice team. We tried to be as proactive as possible, identifying tenants that we thought this was going to be happening to. I can give full assurance. We do obviously have to send a letter out if a rent account goes in arrears, but as soon as we make contact, we deal with that as sensitively as we can. We will look at payment dates or paying an additional amount each week to make up any shortfall, but we'll always check each individual, the household finances, before we enter into any payment arrangements. So we're dealing with it as best we can. I think it's the final phases of the universal credit migration. So I think when this is done, it won't happen in the future. But I don't know the operational detail. I'll certainly go away and have a chat with my team. But I can give full reassurance that, yes, we send a letter out. As soon as we get a response, we'll deal with that case as empathetically as we can.
Matt, thank you very much. Do you have a sense of when the migration will finish? Okay, so it might drag on for some time. Suzanne?
I was just going to say, if you're writing to Max, can you also write to Cam? Because Cheltenham's pretty split between Cheltenham and Gloucester now. So Cheltenham and Tewkesbury, sorry, not Cheltenham and Gloucester. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, at the same time. Glenn?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I believe we have the 4-week holiday from rents. Is it possible just to simply roll over until we get to that point and then just allow someone to pay at that point?
Yes, we have rent 3 weeks, so we have 4 in the year, as outlined in our rent policy. So again, those periods at time where we will allow tenants, if they make a payment, then that would come off arrears. So all that's taken into account with any payment arrangements. That's key examples are why the rent-free weeks are quite beneficial, the way we structure our rent accounting year.
Ian, thank you again for bringing that up. Oh, Jan, sorry. So Suzanne said, because Cheltenham Borough falls into the Tewkesbury constituency as well as the Cheltenham constituency, can we write to Cameron Thomas as well as Max Wilkinson to make sure that we've got everyone covered off, which is a good idea. So, next item is review of the Housing Committee forward plan. The forward plan was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read. No decision is required, but please do comment on the forward plan if you want and suggest future items the committee could consider. Are there any kind of major issues that you really want to be on the agenda that you want us to talk about? Most of them are on there. Okay, so shall we take that as read? We're not far off finishing this, actually. We've done it very quickly. Next item is item 12, items to be referred to Cabinet. So it's all the policy documents, basically. The committee has recommended the following to Cabinet. So it's the rent setting policy, which was Appendix 2, the recharge policy, Appendix 5, the empty homes / voids policy, Appendix 8, and the repairs and maintenance for tenanted properties policy, Appendix 11. So that goes to Cabinet next. All those things which we approved. Excellent. Item 14 is the Housing Sector Insight Report. So the briefing note was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read. No decision required, but please do comment if you wish on it. Any comments? Okay, then we're on to the final item, which is the date of the next meeting, which is Wednesday, the 21st of January at 6 o'clock. Looking forward to it. Is it too early to say Happy Christmas? No. Oh, okay, so you're the first people I've said it to. So Happy Christmas. I confirm that the meeting is now closed.